But here is a carpenter.
You need something? If not,
So
I've got...
we're going to show what, and again, all carpenters in any city sell these. So these are the blueprints. I already have them. One nice thing, as you can see in the upper left hand corner, if you already know that blueprint, you don't it shows that you already know it, so you know not to buy it again. Same thing if you find blueprints out in the world. If you already know it, then you know that you can sell it, give it to an alt, give it to a friend, whatever. And right now, because recipes are so hard to come by right now, recipes are selling quite well. Furniture recipes are selling quite well on the auction house, depending on what they are. So like if you try to put something like this up there, like this rough bonded box where you can just buy it for 150 from the vendor, yeah, you're not gonna, unless you're selling it for 50, so basically at a loss, you're not gonna get much for it. But some of the other stuff you can do quite well. When I first looked, granted this was several weeks ago, I'd have to look again to see how furniture recipes are doing, but you couldn't buy a furniture recipe for less than 1,000 gold, maybe 2,000, 1,000, 2,000 gold. It may have calmed down since then, but yeah, you could do quite well if you weren't interested in crafting. Here's the woodworker sign also that I was telling you about. Okay, it's only 5,000, but that's what it is. It may be an animated sign, but it's a sign nonetheless. And you can only get it, A, if you're willing to pay 5,000 gold, and B, if you are max level in woodworking. Usually they also sell one other thing. So like this, for example, Master Harvester of Timber. Apparently, I have not gotten that achievement yet, which I'm surprised considering how much wood I've harvested. But those are the two items that all of the crafting related vendors sell. So they sell a sign and then they sell one other odd thing. And you can only get it if you're max level or have a certain achievement. A lot of the things in housing are tied to achievements. The only exception are again the found recipes and recipes like this. They're not there. You just have to find them and then have the ability to craft them. I actually have bought all these because I didn't know what they were when I first bought them. I can show you. That's the other thing that is a little bit off-putting, is that you can't just see what your recipes are. You actually have to go to the station that it's related to. Go to your blueprints. And some, not all of the professions call them blueprints. Some of them call them diagrams. Some of them call them something else. But it's always going to be the icon on the farthest right. And then you can go through and see all the recipes you have. And again, this is the one and only place where you can actually preview stuff so far. So I do hope that they change that. The other cool thing is you can see clearly what your materials are. Notice this is a quote-unquote green level recipe, and so at least one of the items is going to be green. The other thing that I mentioned is that the number of mats. So considering how much farming you have to do to get mats, this is a lot of mats. So basically when you go out farming, you just farm your normal nodes. It doesn't matter what level you are. The heartwood in this case, or the regulus in the case of ore. Heartwood, of course, is wood. You just harvest whatever nodes you are able to harvest, and these can drop. The problem is they don't drop very often. You can go out one day, harvest 10, 20 nodes, nothing drops. You can go another day and maybe every third to fourth one will drop. You just never know. You just have to go out and harvest and get lucky. But things don't drop very often. Not, in my opinion, not often enough. And even when they do drop, I've never seen a drop more than 3. Your drops are either 1, sometimes 2, and on rare occasion 3. Tie that with the fact that it's not every node. I mean, literally, I've gone out and just harvested 10, 20, 30 nodes and nothing. So that can be very, very frustrating, particularly then when you come back to try and create something and it takes that many, and then it turns out to be something like this. And for me, what's annoying is that these courtyard items are some of the first recipes that I got. And these, considering that so many of the houses, particularly in the early stages of housing, don't have yards and are very tiny, why would this be some of the first things that you get that just randomly show up as a drop? And I really shouldn't say a drop, because killing mobs is one of the least ways you will ever get a recipe. We've been playing for 2 months since housing opened. I should say since housing started, we've been playing, and I've never gotten a drop from a mob. My friend that I play with have gotten 2 drops from 2 mobs, and that happened last week. So getting drops from mobs is not the way. It is very rare. It is almost as rare as getting a painting out of a treasure chest, and quite frankly, for me, it's even more rare because I've gotten 3 paintings out of treasure chests. He's only gotten 1, but well, actually I've gotten 4. 1 was a repeat, and I gave the repeat to him. So and that they've even said that that was going to be a rarity. I've gotten paintings out of chests, but I've never gotten a recipe off a mob. So, but I'm going to quickly just kind of go down. This I have in my house, by the way. This is a dark elf chair. The other thing that is a little, I have this in my house too, so you'll see that, a little off-putting, is that basically where you get the recipes is basically by going in delves and dungeons and public dungeons. And you can get them out in the world, but basically it's by looting chests and crates and barrels and sacks and backpacks and urns. That's where you basically pick up your recipes. And again, that is luck of the draw as well. It's not like you go up to every little thing. I mean, we've run delves, and several delves in a row, and not the same one, but several delves for like when you do the Undaunted, and nothing, got not one single solitary recipe. And then there are other times where you might pick up 1. I would say the average would be 1 or 2. Yesterday I got really lucky, and I picked up I think 3 or 4 recipes, and they weren't repeats. They were ones I didn't have. Granted, I was doing it on my alt, but still, there were recipes that I didn't have. Whereas on this tune, I've actually gone through, there was one time when we were running delves, and I got 6 recipes, but 4 of them were repeats. So I gave them to him. And again, frustrating, because this early in the game, you shouldn't be running into that in this early in having housing implemented. You should not be getting that many repeats. Highly frustrating, particularly when you consider how many housing items recipes they allegedly have, because it really makes you question that when you start getting recipes and you're only in month 1. The other thing is that it doesn't matter where you're running a dungeon. You would think that if you were in an area like, let's say, Spindle Clutch. Spindle Clutch is in Daggerfall territory. So you would expect to see Breton, Redguard, or Orc. Not necessarily. You might see anything, because they don't do it by area, which again is frustrating, because let's say you really like the Redguard style, or you really like the Dark Elf style. You can't go into an Ebony Pact area or an Ebonheart Pact area and expect to get Nord or Dark Elf or Argonian, because there's a huge possibility you won't. You can get any type of recipe anywhere, from any dell, from anywhere out in the dungeon, doesn't out in the world, doesn't matter where you are. To me, that's stupid. It should be by what area that you're in, and inconvenient in that basically you're just going and getting recipes and, luck of the draw. The other thing that's very frustrating to me is, I'll go back to, where was it? Certain items that you just look at and go, are you freaking kidding me? First of all, why do they call this parlor? This is a dark elf banner post. This is obviously an outdoor item. Why is it in the parlor section? That makes no frigging sense. The other thing that doesn't make any frigging sense is why they are giving me a dark elf banner post, again, this early in housing, and that's all it is. It's a post. I also, and you'll see as I'm going down, I have a flagpole with no flag. Earlier you saw a barrel stand with no barrel. Why? If this were later on, if we were in year 2, heck, if we had just been a year old, then, stuff like that, yeah, I can understand. But when you're first starting out, a barrel stand with no barrel has no interest in me. A flagpole with no flag, actually a flagpole period, I don't care if it has a flag on it or not. If you're starting out with these smaller homes that have no yard, you're really not interested in a tall flagpole. Here's the other thing. I've gotten vending stalls. Why? The vast majority of the houses that you're going to buy are not going to have room for vending stalls, nor is it going to make any sense to having a vending stall. These things are quite large. And some may say, well, maybe you can repurpose it. Look at this thing. Repurpose it as what? So that can be very frustrating. Same here. This is a storage tent, so I'll give you that. But even still, the vast majority of the houses that you're going to get are not going to be able to fit this thing. It's just too big. Mortgage platform. So those are some of the frustrating things. Here's another thing. This is a gray. For some reason, it's requiring a green. The housing mats are relatively okay, like it's only requiring one of the specialty ingredients. Still, 7 is a bit much, but look how nice it looks, and it's a gray. I can show you, here's another one. I actually have this one. I made this one. Very nice in the house. Looks very pretty, and it's a gray. So really, another gray. Not green, not blue, not nothing. And yet, when you look at some of the items that are green and are gray, or that are green or blue or purple, and you're like, really? What is the difference? And again, the only difference that I've seen is the mats. How many and the type. So there was no logic. In other words, if you go and you get excited because you got a purple item or a blue item, don't get excited. Because it may not be as attractive as you may think it is. Now in this case, I'm at the clothing station, and so it's patterns. Argonian rack, drying 3 plates. It's the other thing, some of this stuff makes no sense. The other thing, as far as what they call it, it just doesn't match when you see it, because you'll see recipes when you pick them up and go, oh, this should be interesting, and then you get it and it's like, what the? For example, I have actually on my other tune I have 2 or 3. I have 1 on this tune, but on my alt I have like 2 trestles. When you hear the word trestle, you immediately think outside for lack of a better term, a rack with flowers on it that stands up against your wall. That's not what trestles are here. Trestles are basically tables. And when you look at them, at least in the preview window, they look like they're taller tables. So like a table that goes behind a sofa. I have not made one yet because that's what it looks like. And there are no sofas. I have not run, there may be some, but I haven't run into a sofa yet. So yeah, when I run into one, just maybe I'll buy one. Or I should say make one. Some of the carpets are nice. This one I made, so you'll see this one in the house. It's the nicest one that I've seen so far. I like this tapestry. I probably will make one at some point and hang it. I just haven't done it in the house that I currently have because I have pictures. The banners, I do love this. This is, and this one has actually fallen quite frequently, the Red Guard curtain. I do not have that in my house yet, but when I get my Red Guard's house up and running, yeah, that's definitely one of the things we're going to make. I hate this. This is the only divider that I currently have, and I absolutely positively abhor it. One of the reasons why that's a big deal is because there are no walls in this game yet, as in walls that you can build to make divisions in your house. And the only divider recipe that I've run into so far is this one. My friend that I play with also has one. He has a different one than I do, and he's not particularly fond of it, but it's like, it looks better than this thing. But we know that there are better dividers. Just trying to find the recipe is the thing. The other thing that's weird, another one of the things that's weird, is sometimes you'll get stuff like this. This is orcish bedding. Now what's weird is that I actually have an orcish bed. Made it. You'll see it in the small house, because I made it and I didn't want it just clogging up my inventory, so I put it in the house that I'm no longer using, because once you buy a house, it's yours. You don't pay any rent on it, it's yours. So I have the house. It looks just like this, only it's actually up on it, there's a bed underneath it. So I really didn't understand the point of this. I do not understand the point of this at all. This fortunately was not a drop. This was something that you can buy from any of the clothing NPCs. This and the bedroll. And again, for so early in the housing system, this made slightly more sense. This made no sense. None whatsoever. You're not going to put that in the house. This makes no sense to me either. The stool I actually like, and I have that in the house. So those are the type of things that you can make. I'll do one more real quick, the provisioning one. And the only thing that kind of annoys me about the provisioning one is the use of flour. Decorative wax falls a lot. Notice that this is the first time you see it, and I have a ton of it. Decorative wax is pretty easy. That's the only one that's very easy to find. I believe they're called Mundus. I believe they're called no, maybe they're not Mundus stones, but they're stones that you get from rune crafting. That would be next in line. But decorative wax is one of the few materials that actually flows pretty freely. Wood and stone, no. Rough time trying to get that. But the other thing about provisioning is the amount of flour and stuff that makes no sense to have flour with. Snakes on a rope. Really? And that's what it looks like. How you get flour out of that? Guts or something would have made more meat. Some type of meat would have made more sense, but not. Oh goodness. And then urn. The urn didn't make sense to me either. A canister, which I have that. I have the Orcus canister. That makes sense. An urn doesn't. An urn is what you put ashes in, not food. The Nord stew pot, I made this. I like it. That kind of bothers me. I'm not sure what kind of bone that's supposed to be in. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be. But nevertheless, stew pot has stew in it. I definitely made one. That's in my house. Red Guard kebabs, I just haven't gotten around to making this one yet, but I intend to, basically because I haven't made a plate to put on it. I do have a plate recipe, but haven't done it, and again that goes into the number of materials things take. Lettuce. Now this just looks like, you know, some romaine lettuce. What does flour have to do with this? I don't get it. Or the nickel. But beets on a string. My issue with this was, again, I mean, I can deal with the decorative wax in that, okay, let's just say that it's for preserving. Beets, of course, makes sense. Flour makes no sense. Nickel makes no sense. I mean, I understand it's supposed to be a display, but since you have it, since you have to go to the hearth and make this stuff, why not just act like it's real cooking? I didn't get that at all. But yeah, two beets on a rope. And then a common food bowl with soup in it. I made this. It's in my house. It looks more like gruel, in my opinion. And then I have a common candle set. And I've gotten this recently. And if it just, it's the amount of flour really, really bugs me. I mean, because flour is not easy to come by, and I have yet to run into a grocer that sells it. So we are going to first go to my little in room, and again, Ebon Heart pack, so it's going to be the Ebon Flask in room. So we're just going to travel to that house, and again, I will show you how tiny it is, and just a couple of, basically I'm using it as storage at this point. So if I find something or make something that I don't want clogging up my inventory in my bank, I do have items actually in my bank, but if I know I'm never gonna use them, or if I believe I'm not gonna be using them anytime soon, I just put them in here. This is the orcish bed I was telling you about. So as you can see, the bedding looks exactly the same, only it's on a platform, which makes sense. So I don't understand why I would need the orcish bedding when I have an orcish bed. I thought that was an idiotic redundancy there. This is another thing that I think is idiotic. It is, I just have it hovering here. It is a basket lid. Yes, there is actually a recipe called basket lid, and that's all it is. My friend actually has the recipe to make the basket that we believe it goes with. But the fact that you have a basket and a basket lid, again, in and of itself is not an issue. It's just that it is so early in the housing system to have a recipe for a basket lid and then a recipe for the actual basket just seems idiotic when you consider the drop rates of the recipes and the drop rates of the materials. If there was a higher drop rate of materials and recipes, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But because the drop rates are so low for both, I have a big problem with it. And I accidentally created that. I most certainly didn't do that on purpose. So now we'll go to my new house, or my new house, to my real house. So this is my primary house. You can have players visit you. They can visit your primary house if you give them permission. And that's, you can't just walk up to, so like in EQ2, if you walk up to a house, you can click on it and everybody that has that house will be listed, and it's just a matter of whether they allow visitors or not. Here that's not the same. So like this is an actual door. If I click on this door and leave, I will be outside of where this house is, and I can go back in. The thing is that if I go back, it won't even give me a list of other people who also have this house. I just go right back into my house, which for role-playing purposes makes sense, but for convenience, not even a little convenient. You basically just have to know somebody, or be friends with somebody, and they give you access to their house. And if they're not online, it has to be their primary residence. So I am going to try and do that because my friend has this exact same house and he has different decor than I do on the inside. So on the outside here, one thing I do want to point out, so I am going to turn on the housing editor, is that Everything except what I point out to you shortly came with this house, but I can actually move it. So this piece, this little slab here, if I wanted to, I could pick it up and move it and put it somewhere else. Since it actually came with the house, I thought that was really, really nice, because a lot of times in different housing systems, if it came with the house, you can't move it. It is stuck there. Whereas all this stuff, notice when I highlight it, mouse over it, if it highlights, I can move it, including this lamppost. So I thought that that was a really nice touch. Here are the things that I've actually put in the house, though. So these flowers here, these glowing flowers, I bought these from Cold Harbor from the luxury vendor several weeks ago, and I like them, and I wish I would have gotten more than one. But again, you saw the pricing. The pricing of that luxury vendor is not cheap, so only got the one. The horse is, you can put, like Swotor, if you've ever played Swotor and gotten involved with their housing, you can put your mounts, and you can put your non-combat pets in here, in your home. And it doesn't matter if you are utilizing them or not, which is cool. So the only thing that I don't like is that, you see, he doesn't move. And that's why I have him stuck over here in the corner. I'm hoping sooner or later I will get something that I can cover him and make it look like he's in a stable. But yeah. And then this is my Guar. He doesn't walk around, but at least he moves. And he is my non-combat pet. A lot of times I'll actually run around with him, so proof that you can put him in your house and run around with him too. This is something I crafted, the Khajiit fire pit, and I put it out here because I have a fireplace in the house, so I don't need the fire pit. And what the other thing I like is that it is interactable. Of course, when you're not in housing editor mode, which I am not. And then you can see here that this was basically the same as that over there, so the difference is that I actually added those flowers. And then this clothesline that I got from one of the regular housing vendors with some clothes on them, I hung that up there. And that's all for the outside.